Hello everybody, it's Wyvern here with another bit of Total War, Warhammer 2, quick match gameplay. This time around we are playing as the Mighty Tomb Kings against the High Elves on the map Aymara Swamp. And so, in this matchup I really wanted to, obviously there's been changes to Ark and there's been nerfs to so many of the Tomb King constructs. They've got, you can see the Shabti Great Bows, or the Shabti have much less armor. They used to sit at, I guess, 105, now they're back down, down to 95. But the Tomb Kings did get a little bit of a buff. Now the Realm of Souls, which used to heal very, very pitiful amounts, has had its healing doubled. So this, I'm hoping, would have a significant impact. Obviously the duration isn't too huge, but I figured, you know, it might have a good impact here. So infantry, I feel, could be potentially viable. I also thought that the Bone Giant looks really cool. I did some testing, and in my testing, the Bone Giant is basically, it feels like about like half of a Luminarch, if that makes sense to any of you guys. It doesn't do as much damage. It does literally about half damage. It's got a huge bonus against large. It's got the weapon strength, the melee stats. That's not what you bring a Bone Giant for. It's terrible in melee. It's basically a Cygor in melee. It can fight off cheap harassment tools, but that's about it. But great armor at 80. A huge HP pool of 9,400, which is, I think, much higher than even the Cygor. And its bow attack is roughly comparable to a is really roughly comparable to a Luminarch. It's just weaker. So I brought that here alongside Khalida, because Khalida is the bow mistress. She can really buff your archers. And if we look at her stats, we can see Venom Wave, of course, Tomb Strike. So just trying to get her a little bit of melee. I will be done, but I did bring Blessing of Asaph, so extra missile damage, extra reload skill, extra AP missile damage, and with all of that down, you can see the Bone Giant is up to 720 damage, which is pretty huge. This guy's not that strong baseline. He's sitting around 500, I do believe, damage. So very, very solid. My front line here, very cheap. You can see it's 2 skeleton spears on the front line. The core is a single unit of Tomb Guard, a single unit of Kepler Guard flanked by 2 Tomb Guard. So it gives me some decent staying power against the High Elf infantry. They can hold their own for a little while, and it's not likely your opponent will bring elite Swordmasters or something like that. So these guys can hold an okay amount, especially against units like Phoenix Guard or Spears or any of those units. And with their Silver Shields, they can soak up missiles pretty good. Alongside them, I did bring a Necrotech. The Necrotech only has healing as well as the Fan Braces of the Sun, providing with -9 melee attack and an AoE. Very, very powerful sort of debuff there, which will make this front line hold even longer. A Lich Priest of Nekar, you may be wondering why. Well, once again, to buff that shooting, he does, of course, have his Nephros Scrolls of Mighty Incantations, which is fairly irrelevant, but more importantly, he does have, well, it's not irrelevant, it gives him a lot more Winds of Magic, but he does have Tross Incantation of Righteous Smiting, which when overcast gives you a massive +20 missile reload skill, so very, very potent. Osirian's Incantation of Vengeance to slow and damage enemies, and then Jov's Incantation of Cursed Blades just to spam my trait, which is the Restless Dead, which is basically just a heal and res. In the back, we do have the King Nikesh's Legion as well as Skeleton Spearmen. So basically just going with a lot of Skeleton Spears for the periphery to really protect my backline shooting, because I've invested quite a bit of money in that. Between the Chosen of the Gods, the Shabti Great Bows, and the Bone Giant, you're looking at about a 4,000. About a third of my army is here as archers. So here we can see the opening shot from the Bone Giant as it reaps into range, going into the Sisters of Avalorn, who are going up also unsuspectingly, and they just get absolutely plastered. You can see that explosion, the little gobbets of elf blood just spattering all over, and 6 elves are instantly down, which is a very significant impact, even though obviously it's perhaps not super efficient use of that ammo. It's a significant impact against Sisters of Avalorn, who are such a dangerous force to my army, especially my Shabti, who do immediately follow up and start teeing off on these sisters as well. For my opponent's build, you can see 2 Sisters of Avalorn providing that anti-large AP that my opponent needs. They're not anti-large themselves, of course, but they do provide that AP that my opponent desires. Front line of Spearmen, as well as 2 Phoenix Guard on the flank, one of which is the Keeper of the Flame. So a very anti-large heavy build. They'll grind out a win with most Tomb King infantry, and they can win in a straight up, and they can obviously hold their own against annoying constructs and units like that. Even normal Ushabti don't have great melee attack, and their bonus versus infantry is not that good. It's only a 5, so Spearmen with their 50 melee defense are actually very resilient to that. And of course, with my opponent, my opponent's Handmaiden of the Everqueen, I can't even speak, mounted here, she is going to be providing some monstrous buffs of her own. She will, of course, be providing Quicksilver Shot, as well as Enchanted Spyglass, Horn of Isha, and Martial Prowess. So, well, actually, that's not providing, but she has a lot of buffs here going in, which will be making these Sisters of Avalorn all that much more powerful. You can see up to 31 missile damage, which is, compared to the base of 25, is incredibly powerful. On the back, and finally, my opponent does have the Fireborn regiment around Dragon Princes with a bonus versus large of plus 18. These guys are absolutely devastating, and especially against Tomb Kings, they could really do a lot of hurt, especially to someone like squishy like Kalita. And if we look at Alariel, who's my opponent's Lord choice, she is, of course, a very solid caster. Not a pushover in melee either, just thanks to martial prowess here. She does have Shield of Sapphire, Life Bloom, Boon of Isha, granting immunity to psychology, Shield Stone of Isha, granting physical resist, Banishment, Earth Flood, and Arcane Conduit, Stave of Averlorn, and Star of Averlorn. So a lot of heals, some decent chaff clear, and definitely a lot of potent sort of spells here. And I do believe she'll be buffing the Phoenix Guard up to like 42% physical resist if she's around them, which means that only the Kepler Guard will really have a hard counter at that. Nonetheless, you can see I'm immediately tearing through the Sister of Avalorn. I see them as the greatest threat. Now, perhaps this is not entirely accurate. You can see the Bone Giant there whiffing a shot, not doing too much on that when he whiffs like this. And I should have shifted fire a little sooner, but you can see I do get a casting here of the Traz Incantation of Vengeance, which is going to make the Ushapti Great Bow fire all that much faster. You can see they're up to 313 missile damage with Kalita next to them. That's over double of what their usual missile damage is. So regardless, they're absolutely plastering these sisters. They're turning them into mush, and you can see they're really not going to last very long against that combined fire. Actually, I do believe I was mistaken. Yeah, I did have Chosen of Gods. For some reason, I thought I was mistaken and hadn't brought Chosen of Gods, but I did. You can see I do hit him with a Restore here, trying to heal them. My opponent tried to cast a Banishment. In my opinion, a big waste of magic here, because they're really not going to be that useful against High Queen Kalita or the Ushapti, even though I'm too lazy to move them out of the way. Or more accurately, I'm tied down trying to micro and stop these annoying Dragon Princes, who are getting into my backline. In the meantime, you can see these first Sisters of Avalorn have routed, which means I'm going to be able to shift my fire onto the second unit. My opponent, with his heavy infantry presence, was really relying on being able to outshoot me, but with the amount of fire I've got going for me, I'm going to be able to suppress his shooting, and then he's not going to have anything to shut down this mob of shooters himself. So really, he's trying to get his Fireborn in there, but you can see that some are getting snagged on these spears. Kalita dives in to slow them down. I do hit them with the Usurian's Incantation of Vengeance, but you can see how fast Kalita just goes down. I do cast a Tomb Strike on her, buffing her up as much as I can. But really, she's not able to hold here. You can see the Fireborn are getting melted, but my opponent counters with the Star of Avalorn. The Nikesh's Scorpion Legion does push in to provide some support, but really, my Queen Kalita is getting annihilated, and I needed to get her out much sooner. I do cast Joff's Incantation of Cursed Blades, just trying to keep her a little competitive, but it's just not happening. In the meantime, though, the Bone Giant is doing work, sniping away at Alariel, who, despite her physical resist, and she has some missile resist if we look, 15%. So despite that, she's a very, very juicy target, and you can see she's already down a massive chunk of her HP. That's what the Bone Giant is for, sniping those sorts of units, and you can see it draws back, and actually doesn't fire there. Not entirely sure why. Regardless, perhaps it just didn't feel like. Either way, the Fireborn here are getting snagged. You can see they're daisy-chained all the way back to this Spearman unit and getting slaughtered in the pits. Again, when I say slaughtered, they have only lost 2 models, but now they're going to hit the Bone Giant, who has very decent armor and, more importantly, very high HP, and they can't really do too much to him. So he's just going to stand here. He'll take it. They'll step on him to push him back. And in the meantime, the Ushapti are coming back online, and they're going to start picking away at these guys and putting them in their place. And you can see the Fireborn here are shortly going to be routed, terror routed. So definitely getting some good value out of the Chosen, out of the Fireborn, so yeah, they're doing rather well. And Kalita, in the meantime, is able to kind of push back out, and I'm just trying to keep her safe from those Fireborn. Unfortunately, my Priest does get caught out here by Alariel, and this was a big mistake. I accidentally ran him out through, and I don't know why. It was just, I think it's an issue with pathing for some reason when I told the whole group to attack. And so he gets caught here, and he's getting pounded by Alariel. So definitely unfortunate for me. Unfortunately, I make a huge mistake here and move High Queen Kalita into an exposed position, trying to get her to buff the Ushapti, but really I should have just kept her clear immediately. And so she's going to take a huge beating from the Handmaiden, from these Sisters of Avalorn, and she's in a really rough spot. For my opponent, though, things are not all rosy. You can see these spears are still very healthy, and while Skeleton Spears are not an impressive unit by any standards, they can hold and they can do quite a bit of hurt over time. These Fireborn are in a terrible spot, and they're getting chipped away at by the Bone Giant. And it's important. The Bone Giant here is up to 39 kills, of which several are against these Fireborn, and that is really just so potent. We can see here. Let's see. You can see a Banishment here just melting my Skeleton Spears. But as we hit, these guys were on 32 models. They immediately lose 5 with that splash. That's a huge hit. Fireborn are an incredibly expensive unit. They cost 1,900 gold. Even with Alariel's healing, they're getting pounded into paste, from which they're not going to be able to recover with the Bone Giant interrupting there. You can see they try to push into these Ushapti Great Bows. They'll do a bit of damage, but they're just taking so much hurt in the process. You can see I do start pulling my Ushapti Great Bows away, trying to get them clear, and you can see another bolt coming in and doing some more damage. These guys are losing more and more models constantly, just getting dragged into the muck, having a very bad time. You can see this lone spearman here just like backing away these guys. It's so pathetic, and he gets jabbed to death, so it doesn't do very much. Anytime they're in the front line, the Kepler Guard, which is incredibly, and actually someone's done testing before, I do believe. The Kepler Guard actually beats Phoenix Guard in a straight up fight. So never underestimate him. I'm hitting him with a Joff's Incantation of Blades to get that ability, the trait proc, getting those heals from the Realm of Souls, and we are actually beating down these Phoenix Guard. Over here, you can see the King Takesha's Scorpion Legion moving in to closing in on the Handmaiden, trying to interrupt her. Fortunately, my Lich Priest from Nakara, though, doesn't last long, and he's going to be put down fairly shortly. I didn't bring the Curse on him, so I don't get any value out of that. That said, you can see the Handmaiden here getting caught out of position, getting jabbed by the spears, getting tied down. Unfortunately, I lost a huge amount of HP on Kalita, who's getting shot to death, or getting beaten to death. Well, first she got shot to death by the Handmaiden. Now she's getting chased by Alariel. So it's a running retreat here, going as fast as I can. I do throw the Ushapti into melee just to tie Alariel in close quarters. You can see Alariel's got some crazy attack animations as well. She's got like a glowy attack. It's not like Dragon Ball Z that she is very radiant. It's not like the Dragon Ball Z moves though that you get with I'm trying to think of the Fey Enchantress. Regardless, over here the Keepers of the Flame definitely trading very well with the Tomb Guard. Unsurprisingly, the Tomb Guard did demolish some spears in there, so can't complain too much. But you can see the Temple Guard over 100 kills. They managed to rout off those Phoenix Guard, and they are now, or help rout off those Phoenix Guard, and they are now slaughtering these spears. So doing a great job in here. As those Shopti do fight their way clear, and here I do something very perhaps unsportsmanlike. So I'm like, I don't know, honestly, I want us to win, and that's play your games to win. I pulled High Queen Kalita out, and I actually go hide her in the woods. Obviously, my intent was not to camp the game out. For those of you guys who are screaming that it's unsportsmanlike, oh well, I apologize, but I pulled her out with the intent that I'm just going to hide her and prevent my opponent from sniping her. It would give my army the best chance it had of winning. You can see the Phoenix Guard here are being routed off. They're getting slaughtered, and they're in a very bad spot. In the meantime, I do actually pull a little bit of sneaky maneuver here on my opponent. I pull the Tomb Guard out of the way, allowing him to pincer with the Keepers of the Flame, and that actually exposes them to the Bone Giant, who doesn't have much ammo left on him, but with the monster splash attacks, he's able to kill several of them, and these are the most dangerous unit my opponent still has, so I really want to put them in the dirt, if at all possible. Now, unfortunately for me, Realm of Souls actually hasn't procced all of its charges yet. You can see my opponent here pulling out the Fireborn. 300 HP, they're basically in the dirt, but they're still fighting, but they do immediately get terrified. You can see a few of them do get cut down by the Ushapti, and they run away. So the Bone Giant teaches them a bit of a lesson. My opponent, in the meantime, though, chasing after my Ushapti, doing a lot of hurt. And in case you're wondering why he's diving in, besides to just shut him down, keep in mind that Handmaiden has Bones Verse Large. Now, granted, it's her melee damage isn't that AP, it's not that great, but against Ushapti, against these low model count units, she will do a lot of hurt. She'll probably be almost one-shotting, or maybe even one-shotting a unit with every hit. So I do try to pull away here. I pull clear, get the Tomb Guard in there to interdict. Just trying to buy myself some time. In the meantime, the Bone Giant does fire another shot at Lariel, doing a little bit, I actually think, whiffing, but, you know, applying pressure, forcing my opponent to think. Now, unfortunately, the Fireborn here come out of the woodwork. They're fighting my Ushapti, the Chosen of Gods here, and my opponent, in the meantime, does push Lariel into close quarters. She does get hit once by the Bone Giant. I really should have tried to focus her out earlier, honestly, but the Bone Giant's obviously not going to hit her very often. It's got a terrible chance to hit with only 31 melee attack. So, there it does. Right as I say that. Regardless, you can see here in the pits, the Handmaiden of the Everqueen is beating down on my Ushapti Great Bows, but I'm pulling the spears back to deal with her. At this point, my opponent is in a very grim state. You can see the bounce of power, though, is dead even. If he manages to catch Kalita, who I'm just keeping on the periphery here, I wasn't going to do like some crazy round the map route or run around. Just keeping her hidden in the woods there. So, with my Lord that close to death, with Alariel still somewhat healthy, with this unit of Keepers of the Flame who are so very powerful, and of course with his Handmaiden, my opponent still has a little bit of a force left. You can see these Phoenix Guard are actually coming back and rallying, and in the meantime, my army here is getting beaten down. Part of this is, of course, because the Keepers of the Flame tend to explode, and when they explode, they immolate the units around them. They do a lot of AoE damage, so that's rough for the squishy skeletons. You can see the Necrotech here fighting tooth and nail. I probably should have pulled him out as well, though. At this point, he's used his charges of healing. At this point, my opponent really, he doesn't have the units to maneuver. You can see I actually pulled all of my Ushapti against the Fireborn, who are down to 12 models, and they have to get killed to man before they finally give up the ghost. But over here, the Bone Giant is beating down on Alariel now in melee. He's not winning, but now I'm going to get my Ushapti into position, and they're going to start shooting Alariel. No mercy here for her. No rest of the wicked. You can see over here the final proc does go down. You can see it's actually going to do quite a bit of healing here. And you can see I do try to summon a shot to block her escape. Don't manage it. I do get a final shot in there with the Bone Giant as she flees. And now she's getting peppered away at by the Ushapti Great Bows, who are just going to do immense work. You can see she loses about 200 HP, 300. She's getting completely dumpstered. Over here, the Handmaiden's still doing very well, but honestly, if I push the Bone Giant against her, he's gonna struggle, but he could probably do some damage and knock her down a bit. And in the meantime, I do some of those Ushapti, get them into the back of these Keepers of the Flame, which are really the last unit holding my opponent together, and pull poor Alariel here does take a bolt to the face. This is odd. It's actually like come through her horse. You can see some little bit of glitching there, some mesh glitches, but whatever. Took some bolts to the face, and that's the end of the Radiant Queen. So poor her. Here in the pits, the Elven troops are giving up the Ghost, getting slaughtered. You can see the Phoenix Guard routing. The Handmaiden still holding strong, but now I'm peppering her down with Ushapti. That they're getting their revenge for the fact that she hunted them so annoyingly, and we do get a Pyrrhic victory for the Tomb Kings. So, a few thoughts and opinions, I guess. Obviously, I hit Queen Khalida, but then again, I made some major mistakes with her early on, which saw her thrown into a fight that she couldn't win. Honestly, some micro mistakes. I saw that my opponent only had one unit of heavy cav, and I should have moved my spearmen into position sooner to block them, and I didn't, and that was a huge mistake. And because of that, they were able to sneak past and do quite a bit of harassment, if not an amazing damaging job. For this army comp, I do think it's relatively competitive. Once again, the Lich Priest getting thrown in was a huge mistake on my part. Basically lost him for prematurely when I could have kept casting spells later into the game. Necrotet did invaluable work. He did help heal up the Ushapti, which meant that I kept models on the field, and keeping models on the field with shooting units is very useful because that means that's all of that is extra shooting you can get out. The Bone Giant, I got huge value out of him. Absolutely loved it. I came in with no chevrons, and managed to wipe out a good chunk of the Sisters of Avalor, managed to wipe out those Fireborn in large part, and hit Alariel with some pretty meaty shots, and also fight them in close quarters. The Bone Giant honestly performed really well. I think it's in some ways better than a Cygor. Not in all ways, but in some ways. I think it's a pretty powerful unit. If you want to go sniping lords, it can be very powerful. I've had it in some games. You basically bring it like Luminarch. I've brought it in some games against Beastmen as well, and I just sniped Khazrak immediately, and my opponent basically quit immediately. So it's hard to get good games like that. But at the same time, you can. It's definitely a potent unit. Don't underestimate the power of the Bone Giant. It's very strong, and it's a very cool unit, and I'm definitely hyped that we got it. As far as the nerfs, I didn't really feel them. I think the Chosen, the gods, the Ushapti Great Bows are still very strong. And in my other experience with the Tomb Kings so far, their constructs are still very solid. They're definitely weaker than before, but it's not a game-breaking drop. You can see Kepler Guard doing very well. They're a very powerful unit against High Elves because they trade so effectively with the Phoenix Guard, which are an incredibly common pick in this matchup. So I said they settle incredibly a lot there, but they're a very, very good pick against the High Elves because they're so good against Phoenix Guard. Tomb Guard held okay, and the Spears were just there as cannon fodder, and they did a fine job as that. There wasn't anything else to expect from them, and obviously, keep in mind, of course, Ushapti do cost the same as Sisters of Avalor, so, while the Sisters are certainly strong, the Ushapti, if you're able to use them correctly, if you're able to get heals off, if you support them a little bit with that Bone Giant just to break up the formation a little early, it's a very powerful combo. You can melt them. I got rid of my opponent's shooting, and they got minimal value. And so I basically got 2,200 points worth of my opponent's army off the field, with my opponent getting almost nothing out of it. So got good value there. So for my opponent's build, I do think it's not necessarily a bad idea. The Sister of Avalor definitely give you potential in the anti-large sort of armor piercing department. However, it's a very elite build, which leaves it very open to certain sniping maneuvers. Obviously, Fate of Buna against this would be brutal. You can just Fate of Buna one of these two critical units, Fireborn or Keepers of the Flame. Nukes of all sorts would just be very, very powerful. And there's a huge issue with this build if you're fighting against a mob of skeleton infantry. If your opponent is able to bring a lot of skeleton archers, a front line of largely Tomb Guard, some Kepler Guard, they can overwhelm your front line. They'll oversaturate you. Your Fireborn are not going to carry that sort of situation. They can bring some Tomb Guard halberds to deal with them, and they can bring Archon, and basically you're in a very, very bad spot. They can hit you with Fate of Buna, they can melt this, and the skeleton archers will pick apart your troops because they just have such powerful options. And obviously we kind of saw this here where this firing squad just picked a lot of their troops apart, and then my opponent wasn't really able to deal with his backline at all, while the front line just held and traded really efficiently, and that was without any nukes designed to melt Phoenix Guard or Fireborn. But nonetheless, good game to my opponent, John Malkovich. Obviously, it's a new meta, so there's plenty of learning to do. There's plenty of I might turn out to be completely wrong. Maybe the bone giant sucks and I've hacked and I just got lucky here. But I've had a lot of fun with it. Definitely looking forward to get more use out of it. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, be sure to leave a like and subscribe down below. If you have any comments, any criticisms, anything like that, be sure to share it. I'll respond as soon as I can. As usual, I do appreciate you all for watching, and I will see you all in the next one. Bye for now.